welcome to Learning Music with Pat. I've been talking to you about different types of timing, how whole notes divide into half notes, divide into quarter notes, divide into eighths and sixteenths and 32nds and 64th. But I'm going to show you the same thing, but I'm going to do it in a different kind of way. I know there are a lot of folks that have trouble learning mathematics, and it doesn't make a lot of sense to them. And actually, I'm one of those people, because I'm not good at math either. And so there's no shame to it, but you need to have something that exemplifies what I'm talking about, that will make it absolutely clear to you. So I'm going to try a method that I use to teach children and also beginning students who are adults, so that they could get a sense of the time, because it can be confusing for some people. So I kind of call this my donut method of teaching, and we'll be using the charts on the screen here. Remember, 3/4 means 3 beats to a measure, and a quarter note gets 1 beat. And 4/4 time, 4 beats to a measure, and the quarter note still gets 1 beat. As long as there's a 4 on the bottom, right underneath that middle line, that references a quarter note each time, and I'll be showing you why that is. And here's the donut. Now, what I actually did when I worked with this, I went out and I bought a dozen donuts. They were all sugar-coated donuts, the small ones. You can get small packages. And I put one on a friend's photocopy machine, and I lowered it enough, but not completely, or it would have been just crumbs. I lowered it enough to kind of get a few little crumbs, but get the main shape. And as it turns out, it came out quite well. Then I took the photocopy, the image from the photocopier, and then I just increased the size, just, you know, making it larger and larger. So this is the donut. It was really smaller than that when I put it on the photocopier. So that's your sugar donut right there. Now let me turn some pages here. You start off with, let's say, 4/4 time. And as I said before, 4 beats to the measure. The top line tells you how many beats there are to the measure, and the bottom line says what kind of a note gets 1 beat. So this is 4/4 time. So this is what we're going to be working with for now. This is the donut. It's a whole donut. Everything is in that donut that's ever going to be in that donut, and it's represented by the whole note. There's only going to be one whole note to a measure, because whatever the time is, that whole note is going to have that amount of time. So 4 beats to a measure, this whole note is worth 4 beats. If it happened to be 3 beats to a measure, like in waltz time, that whole note would be 3 beats. It is whatever the time signature says it is, and it would be the only note in that measure. So if you cut your donut in half, you get 2 halves. So if you cut this whole note in half, you get 2 halves, the same thing. The half note is also a clear circle with a stem, and it takes 2 halves to make a whole. So there is your 2 half notes. Now, if you want to split the half note, what do you get? You get quarters. This has been split so that there are quarters. That's where that 4 comes from, is the fact that you have 4 quarters. And so what do you have? Quarter notes. 4 quarter notes. And the quarter notes are darkened. They're from the whole and half notes are the only notes that are clear. Those are darkened, and they all have stems on them because they're blackened in. If they were not blackened in, it would look just exactly like a half note. So 4 quarter notes, 1, 2, 3, 4. You've cut the whole into halves. You've cut the halves once again, and you get 4 quarter notes as a result of that. It's just following the pattern. Now let me turn this again. So what if you take the quarters and you cut them again. Well, I just made this little circle up here to remind you. Here's a whole note, and then it's cut twice, and you get your 4 sections, and that's how you get your quarter notes. But you can take your quarter notes and you can cut them in half, and what you get is 1/8 notes. So you have 8 little pieces here, and they have the body, and they have the stem, and they have 1 flag on them. The flags are the little things that stick out like here. Those are the flags, and or you can have more than one together with a line across connecting the 2, and that is also considered to be a flag for each section. So therefore, you have your flags and you have your 8 notes. Now, if you take an 1/8 note, then you get 16ths, and I have it. This is what I've done that's different. I didn't do this with the kids that I taught. I didn't go into the 16ths quite this early. But so you have 16 of these little sections here, and the 16th notes are your black notes. They stick up, and then you have 2 lines across, and those are the 16th notes. An 1/8 note gets 1 line, 1 flag. The 16th gets 2 flags, and you can put them together in the line across. You actually have 2 lines across. So this is the 16th. I don't know if you can pick that up. I don't know if it's going to be big enough to pick up. It's got the 2 flags, and this is the 1/8. It's got the 1 flag. So there you have it. And then let me switch here. Whoop. The hardest part of this is getting the pages turned right. So here I've done kind of a recap, and I've gone as far as the 1/8 notes. Whole note, divided in half, and those each one of them divided in half to get the 8. So that's kind of a recap. Whole note, whole donut. Half a donut, 2 half notes. Cut it again and you get the 4 pieces, and you get the 4 quarter notes, and then you get the 8s with the 1 flag. And that's basically what it is. You can keep subdividing. You can take those 1/8 notes and you could split them up again, although there would be so many lines it would be difficult to comprehend it, but it could be done. And you'd get the 32nd notes, which have 3 flags. And then you could take the 32nd notes and cut them in half again and get the 64th notes, but there would be so many lines that would be not good artistry at all, so I didn't go that far. And we're not working with 32nds and 64th notes in here anyway. Okay, so I'm going to be playing, and the first that I'm going to play is this march that I wrote, and let's take a look at the timing, because we're doing 16ths, 8ths, and whole notes, a dotted half, and quarter notes. That's pretty much what we're going to be dealing with anyway. And so what we do is we look at the signature. This, of course, is a treble clef. It's 4/4 time. That means there's 4 beats to the measure, and the quarter note gets 1 beat. So this is 1 beat, it's a quarter note. Then you get the 4/16. There are 4/16 to a beat. Remember when I took the donut and we cut the 8ths into 16ths? Well, there are 4/16 to a beat. Quarter notes gets the beat, 4/16 to a beat. So if you want to count this out, and if you were playing an instrument and you were beside me, I would have you count in your head. You couldn't count as you were playing, but this is, excuse me, 1 beat, 2 beats, 3 beats, 4 beats. Now what about this measure? 1, 2 beats, because it's a half note. A half note gets 2 beat. Remember the 2 halves of the donut. 2 beats to a half note. This is tied. This is a hold or a tie mark, so you don't tongue that note. You play it as if they were all connected. So that would be a half note and an 1/8 note combined as 1 note. However, you don't tongue it and you don't count it that way. It's 1, 2, 1, and 2 n, because these are 1/8 notes, and 1/8 notes are half of the quarter notes. So So 1, 2, 3, and 4n, and you still get your 4 beats to the measure, but this is 2 beats. The 16th note would be 1 beat, 4 to 1 beat. The 8th note is going to be 1 and 2 n. It's going to be 2 beats. You know, they're connected together, but this is 1 and 2 n, and so therefore you get 2/8 to a beat. And here you on the 16th you get 4 notes to the beat. And this is the way that it goes. When you get to the dotted half, the dotted half is 3 beats. How do I know that? Well, I know that because a half note is 2 beats, and when you get a dot beside a note, it's worth half the value of the note that just preceded it. So a half note is worth 2 beats. There's a dot there. That means it's worth 1 beat, because 1 beat is a half of that 2. You just add it together and you get the 3. And then this would be the 4th beat. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. They're all quarter notes. They do have, this is a sharp and this is a B flat. Those are considered to be accidentals because they're not in the signature. The key signature just has an F. F sharp. And so every time you hit an F, like you hit one here, and various places, then that's going to be sharp. Now, I did put a sharp in here, and I had to, because when you have an accidental, that made that F natural instead of sharp. So that was an accidental. But that goes through the whole measure. So in order to get that back to being sharp again, I have to put another sharp sign on it, because otherwise, if I didn't, it would remain an F natural. But I want it back to the F sharp, so I have to put a sharp in it, even though there's already a sharp in the key signature. And so therefore, that makes that another accidental. Here's an accidental with a G sharp, an accidental with a G sharp. This is a B flat, and that's an accidental 2. And here's 1, 2, 3, 4 beats, 1, 2, 3, and 4 n, and these are all 8th notes, so they're going to be 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 n. You can see that it's faster than a quarter, but it's not as fast as a 16th. D sharp is going to be an accidental. C sharp is an accidental. So I'm going to play this. It's just a match that I happened to write, and I think that it'll go well, and I'm not going to play it. I'm not going to play it very fast. What you have to remember about marches, a lot of them are not very fast. Some of them are, but many of them are not. And so you don't have to have them fast to be a march, but it's kind of a type of music. It's like a march music. You can march to it, you know, and it's usually uplifting and a happy kind of song. So this is a march which I wrote, and I don't title them because I just don't, because I write quite a bit of them. So remember, 1, 2, and 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll do this whole thing. There are no repeat signs or anything like that, so I'll just play the whole thing. Now, I did change the last note, so I just changed it a little bit. So at any rate, this is what it is, not fast. One of the reasons that I don't want to do this one fast is the fact that, you know, I am tonguing everything. If I wanted to go fast, Now, I could do that, but the thing is, it's the faster you get, the harder it is to tongue those notes, especially the faster notes. So when you are practicing it and when you are playing it, you need to keep it at a speed where your tonguing will not be impeded. Now, I can tongue notes very fast, but if you're a beginning student, you have to think about it. There's a way of tonguing. There's a way of doing it, and you have to think about it. You can't just, you know, you've got to tongue it. You've got to get your tongue right on that mouthpiece inside of your mouth and tap the mouthpiece as fast as you can. So the speed that you take it will probably be the speed that you can do the tonguing. Now also, a lot of times, and I didn't put it in here, but a lot of times I will slur the two notes and tongue two. One, a slur, now that's not the same thing as a tie. If I tie something, it's the same note and I hold it over like it was a longer note. But slurring goes from one note to the second note without tonguing it. And there are two notes involved, so it'd be, you could probably see, you could probably hear in your mind's eye what it's like to slur. And that usually sounds pretty good. Now, I didn't do that here because I want to give you the practice of the tonguing. So instead of, if I really wanted to have the combination, I would have written a little mark, like a curved mark, and you would tongue this one. You always tongue the first note of a slur. But there would be no tonguing of that note. You would tongue these two notes, and that's the way it would go. It would be very awkward to try to slur this here. Slurring it doesn't sound good. Sounds much better tonguing. Because you get the notes crisp and you get the notes clear, and that's what you want. You don't want to have people guessing what it was that you just played. It needs to be clear and it needs to be crisp. And the only way you can do that really is to actually tongue it. And down here, where you get that G sharp, if you slur that, and I'm just going to do it so you'll hear what it sounds like, it's better. And I was slurring that, and it wasn't sounding very clear. It wasn't sounding very crisp. So you really need to do a lot of tonguing. Most of the time, when you get to a march or when you get to other music, you'll be tonguing most of the time. Occasional slurs, but not a lot. And then you get this tie right here, where this note is attached to this note, and you don't tongue it. The only difference between the tie and the slur, or the hold, you can call that a tie or a hold. The only difference is the fact that if you're doing it with the same note, you get the same curve over the note, but you're attaching one note to another, and it's the same note, so you don't hear any difference. But in a slur, a regular slur, say if I did a D to a C sharp, I would tongue the D, I wouldn't tongue the C sharp, I would have the same curve above it, but you could hear that it was a different note instead of you can hear both notes, so therefore it wouldn't be so bad there. But if you're going faster, it muddles things up quite a bit. So this is just a plain march. Now, let me go to the next one. Whoops. Turn the page here. And I have the same kind of thing that I want you to listen to. It's going to be 16ths and eighth notes. Basically, the whole thing is 16ths and eighth notes. The 16th notes have two lines. Those are flags. It's considered to be flags. You're playing them all together as one beat. And then these are eighth notes. Now, everything here is tongue, too, and it is another march, but I wrote it specifically to get you used to 16ths and eighths. So let me play that, and you follow along here and see if you can follow what I'm doing. We have about enough time to try this one. Now, why did I play it twice? I have a repeat mark right here. This repeat tells me that it has to be repeated, and it's repeated right from the very beginning. So I'm playing the whole thing twice. It certainly is a lot easier than writing the whole thing twice, which would cause me to write a lot more. If you know the signs and you know the symbols, and we've gone over the repeat signs, you just go back to where the repeat was, and you play it all again, and then when you hit the end of it, then you stop. This is the easiest way to learn what repeat signs are. Now, I would not want to slur many of these notes, or maybe any of these notes, so I have them all tongued. But if I slurred them, if I didn't tongue them, it would sound terrible. And I'm going to try to make it sound terrible so you see. I mean, it could be done, but it wouldn't sound crisp and it wouldn't sound clear. Tonguing is really, really more important than you can imagine. And so when I have students, one of the first things, after they learn how to blow into the instrument, after they learn how to make sounds out of it, I teach them tonguing right away. And it makes all the difference in the world as to how you sound. So this is another march, and it's based on 16th notes and 8th notes. You do have a dotted half here, which is 3 beats. This is 1 beat. This is an accidental. This sharp here is an accidental, and here's more 16ths, and it's really kind of an easy march to play because the fingerings of the notes aren't hard. Here you have your G and your F sharp. You just put this down. Now, there are other ways of doing. This is the easiest way. I want to mention this A. If I can find it, A, and going to the G sharp. What I did was I half hold that G, here's the A, and I just put my finger on that, and that gets me that G sharp. Or I could use these 2 fingers. This is probably the most secure way to do it, but if you're used to using instruments where you're half holding, it's just real easy to put that on a half hold and then you get that sharp. If I put it on a full hold, if I didn't do it that way and I kept it down, you'd get the full note. There's a difference there. Well, we've run out of time, so I'm going to close it here, and we're going to continue reading music, knowing how to play music, and if you have an instrument that you can follow along, whether it's a song flute or a recorder or a tonette or any one of those kinds of instruments, a regular melody flute, then please do that, because it'll teach you how to play. So we will close it here, and please join me next time.